You don't belong here." Alexander's voice was ice, his gray eyes unreadable as they locked onto hers. Mary held her ground, drenched from the rain, her son's small hand gripping hers. She wasn't here to beg. She never had. But if that were true, why was there a cream-colored envelope in her pocket? And why did the name Hastings feel like a door she shouldn't dare open? Because some doors, once opened, don't just change your life. They unravel it. The rain lashed New York City with a vengeance, turning the streets into a chaos of reflections and rivulets. Mary Miller trudged through it, her 6-year-old son, Jake, gripping her hand. Her umbrella had surrendered to the wind an hour ago, and her sneakers sloshed with every step. She was late for her shift at the diner, where the measly tips barely kept their crumbling apartment afloat. That morning, an eviction notice had glared at her from under the door, the third in 2 months. Life was a fraying lifeline, and she was clinging to the last strands. "Mom, my socks are mush." Jake whined, his voice nearly lost in the storm's roar. "I know, buddy. We're almost at the subway," Mary said, pasting on a smile. She couldn't admit there was no cozy home waiting, just a damp mattress, a leaky ceiling, and a landlord who didn't care. Ahead, an elderly woman in a tailored coat slipped on the slick pavement. Her cane clattering away, Mary didn't think twice. She dropped her soggy bag and rushed over, steadying the woman's trembling frame. "Are you okay?" she asked, brushing wet hair from her eyes. The woman's sharp blue gaze met hers, softening with something like wonder. "Thank you, dear. I'm Eleanor Hastings. You didn't have to stop." "Mary Miller," she replied, retrieving the cane. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Passers-by had scurried past, umbrellas tilted against the world. Eleanor's smile hinted she'd seen something rare in Mary's impulse. 2 days later, a cream envelope slipped under Mary's door. Not the landlord's threats, but an invitation and elegant curse at the dinner at the Hastings estate in Westchester. Eleanor's name signed it with a note, "Bring Jake. He'll love the garden." Mary hesitated. She clawed her way through life without handouts, and this felt like charity dressed up in fancy ink. But Jake's sneakers were held together with duct tape, and her fridge held half a carton of milk. One meal couldn't hurt. The estate was a revelation. Acres of manicured green, a mansion glowing against the twilight. Jake's jaw dropped as they stepped inside, dazzled by chandeliers and the aroma of rosemary from the kitchen. Eleanor welcomed them with a warmth that felt genuine, her silver hair catching the light. Behind her loomed Alexander Hastings, her grandson, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and gray eyes that cut like glass. He radiated icy authority. His tailored suit screamed wealth. His expression screamed suspicion. "You're the one who helped my grandmother," he said, voice clipped. "What do you want?" Mary's spine stiffened. "Nothing. She invited me. I'm not here to beg." His lips twitched, a flicker of surprise cracking his mask. "People always want something." "Not me," she shot back, locking eyes with him. Jake tugged her sleeve, oblivious, asking about the garden. Dinner was a study in contrast. Eleanor's kindness clashing with Alexander's wariness. He watched Mary like a hawk, noting how she cut Jake's chicken into tiny pieces, how she thanked the staff with quiet sincerity. She wasn't like the polished opportunists he'd fended off before, gold diggers in designer dresses who tried to sink claws into the Hastings fortune. That unsettled him, a riddle he couldn't crack. Eleanor wasn't done weaving her web. Days later, a package arrived at Mary's apartment, an emerald green dress, silky and stunning, with a note. "Wear this to the gala. You'll fit right in." Mary scoffed. She'd never fit among the elite, but the dress hugged her like it was made for her. At the charity gala, she stepped into a world of champagne flutes and diamond-studded laughter, feeling like a sparrow among peacocks. Heads turned, including Alexander's. For a moment, his guarded facade slipped, raw hunger flashing in his eyes. Then it was gone. "You don't belong here," he said later, finding her on the terrace. "Then why am I here?" she countered, chin up. He didn't answer, just stared, the air electric between them. A scream shattered the tension. Jake, who'd wandered off, had tripped near the fountain. Mary ran, Alexander close behind. She knelt to soothe Jake's scraped knee, and Alexander handed her his handkerchief. Their fingers brushed, and as lingered, a silent spark igniting. That night, a storm stranded guests, and Alexander offered Mary and Jake a room. She woke at midnight, restless, and found him in the library, staring at a photo of a woman with haunting green eyes. Vanessa, his ex, she guessed. Eleanor had hinted at betrayal over tea, a wound that explained his walls. Who was she? Mary asked softly. Vanessa Drake. He said, the name a bitter shard. She played me, siphoned millions from the company, nearly sank us. Trust is a luxury I can't afford anymore. Mary nodded, seeing the scars beneath the steel. But another figure lingered at the gala, Isabel Moreau, a sleek heiress with raven hair and a predatory smile. She'd hovered near Alexander all night, her hand brushing his arm, her laughter too bright. Mary caught the way Isabel's eyes narrowed at her, a rival sizing up prey. The Ledger and the Watcher. The next morning, chaos broke loose. William Carter stormed the estate, a wiry man with wild eyes and a vendetta. You destroyed my father, Hastings, he roared, shoving past security. Called him reckless, let him take the fall. Alexander's face hardened. Daniel Carter gambled millions he didn't have. I cut him loose to save what was left. Liar. Carter lunged, fist swinging. Mary yanked Jake behind her as guards dragged Carter away. But his parting words echoed. Ask him about the ledger. The word ledger burrowed into Mary's mind. That night, she found Alexander in his study, poring over old files. She crossed her arms. What's Carter talking about? He hesitated, then slid a yellow document across the desk. My father's company was failing. Daniel Carter was our biggest investor. Too big. When it crashed, I severed ties to protect our assets. I didn't know he'd lose everything or hang himself in his garage. Mary's breath caught. You never told his family? I was 22, drowning in guilt. Silence felt like mercy. She saw the fractured boy beneath the billionaire, forced into a brutal choice. He deserves the truth, she said, even if it stings. Alexander's jaw tightened, but her words took root. Days later, Mary noticed a woman in a black coat watching the estate from the gates. She spotted her again during a walk with Jake, unease prickling her skin as the figure vanished into trees. That night, an anonymous note slipped under Alexander's door. The ledger hides more than you think. Check the offshore accounts. Alexander paled, diving into files with frantic energy. He unearthed a hidden account. Millions siphoned not by Vanessa, but by Daniel Carter before the crash. He wasn't just reckless, Alexander muttered. He was stealing. Vanessa must have known, used it to blackmail me into silence. Mary frowned. Then why is Carter after you? He doesn't know, Alexander said. Daniel painted me as the villain to cover his tracks. The revelation shifted the ground beneath them. But before they could act, the woman in black reappeared. At the estate's back door, clutching a USB drive. I'm Lila Carter, she said, voice shaky. William's sister. I found Dad's records. You're not the monster he thinks. Lila's evidence confirmed it. Daniel had funneled money offshore, planning to flee before the collapse. Alexander had unwittingly saved the company by cutting him off, but at a devastating cost. Lila's hands trembled as she spoke. William's unhinged. He's been digging into Dad's past, but he won't listen to me. Mary's past bubbled up unbidden. Her own father, a charming con man who'd abandoned her and her mom when she was Jake's age. She'd sworn never to trust easily, yet here she was, tangled in Alexander's world. We need to stop him, she said, before he hurt someone. Isabel Moreau re-entered the scene, hosting a dinner at her penthouse and inviting Alexander, and, pointedly, not Mary. Eleanor warned her over tea. Isabel's had her eye on Alexander since Vanessa. She sees you as a threat. Mary shrugged it off, but Jake overheard Isabel at the estate days later, whispering to Alexander. She's a nobody with a sob story. You need someone who understands this world. Alexander's reply was curt. I don't need you to choose for me, but Isabel's venom lingered. That night, Mary found a photo slipped under her guest room door. Her and Jake at the diner, snapped from afar. A note scrawled on the back read, "Leave or he pays." Her blood ran cold. Was this Isabel or something darker? The tension snapped one evening in the garden. As Jake chased fireflies, Alexander pulled Mary close. "You're impossible," he murmured and kissed her. It was desperate, unguarded, a wall crumbling. She kissed him back, heart racing, but pulled away when Jake called her name. Hours later, William Carter returned, this time with a gun. He cornered them in the foyer, eyes blazing. "You think you can bury this, Hastings?" Mary stepped forward, hands raised. "He didn't ruin your father. Daniel stole millions, ask Lila." Carter faltered, gun trembling. Lila emerged from the shadows, USB in hand. "It's true, Will. Dad lied to us." Alexander spoke, voice raw. "I didn't know the full story then. I'm sorry for your loss, for my silence. Let me help you rebuild." Carter's resolve wavered. Then Isabel appeared, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't listen, William. He's lying. They all are." She held a phone, a recording of Alexander's earlier confession playing, twisted to sound damning. "I hired someone to dig into you, Hastings. You're finished." Mary's fury flared. "You sent the photo, didn't you?" Isabel smirked. "A warning. You should have taken it." Carter's gun swung between them, confusion warring with rage. Lila lunged, knocking the weapon from his hand. It skidded across the floor and guards swarmed. Carter sank to his knees, broken, as Isabel fled into the night. Weeks later, the air turned crisp, leaves blanketing the estate in gold and red. Carter had taken Alexander's offer, a trust fund to start over, with Lila's guidance. Isabel vanished, her scheme exposed when Lila traced a photo to a PI she'd hired. The ledger's secrets were public, the Hastings name cleared. Alexander found Mary and Jake in the garden, a sapphire ring in his hand. "You showed me love isn't a weakness," he said, kneeling. "Marry me." Jake hooped. "Say yes, Mom." Mary laughed through tears, nodding. Eleanor, watching from the porch, clapped softly, her eyes shining. Lila sent a letter days later. William was in therapy, healing. Mary's past, once a shadow, felt lighter. She'd built something real. The family stood together, rain forged, trust earned, and whole. Love had won, bright and clear as the autumn sky.